Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the collective where I am very sick. I have been very sick my last hauls, but I am better enough to record videos. I am Del Salvador, and this is Mars Volta. Francis the Mute. Now, here's the thing. I'm gonna tell you why this album is kind of overrated, and this isn't me trying to have hot takes. This isn't me trying to find things to complain about. It's a matter of this was the same problem actually when I was going through a bunch of Radiohead stuff, right? Is that I think Mars Volta and Radiohead have the same problems. And it's not necessarily with the band, it's with the community, right? And what do I mean by that? I mean, they're both bands where you ask people, what's their best album, what's their best songs, all that kind of stuff, and all you get is, their debut album is a masterpiece, and then so is the next one after that, and then the next one after that, and just every album is a masterpiece, and I go, oh, okay, well, that means that by definition, I'm in for some really good shit that would be very hard to find flaws in, by definition. So, and then when I went to listen to a lot of Radiohead stuff, like Kid A and Bits of OK Computer and stuff, I was like, man, there's actually a lot I can complain about and not even trying to be like nitpicky or anything like that. There just is things that are very clear issues that are just not being done well that I can complain about. Thus, it is not a masterpiece or a 10 out of 10. It is lower than that. And this is one of those albums where I was kept hearing that this is a masterpiece. And honestly, I've seen this album cover for a long time. Even without knowing it as Mars Volta, I've seen it around a lot, right? I wouldn't say it's iconic, but almost. It's made its rounds, right? So I was like, oh, well, everyone talks about how amazing it is, and I've even seen the album art before, so it's, only the best albums really you see like the album art like transcend beyond the music, like you see a lot of T-shirts and stuff for Dark Side of the Moon, or for like maybe Nirvana's Nevermind, but like or In Utero, but you're not gonna see a lot of like T-shirts and things out in public for like I don't know Birthday Massacre maybe, right? Even though the art of those album covers is amazing. Point is, my expectations are very high, and they were not met. And I thought, you know what, I'll react to this album, and I did. It got blocked. It is on Patreon for free, so you can watch that if you want. Then I got horribly sick, so I've had some days to kind of think about it, and some stuff has grown on me, some of it, but there's still a lot I can complain about. I didn't really see a lot of people talking about Bedlam in Goliath, one of their other albums. So I was like, alright, well, clearly this is an album that is not as good. And I do like what the Mars Volta is going for. I like their sound a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go listen to that album, and I won't react to it. I'll just give it a normal review. Because clearly it's not worth reacting to. Because it's not going to blow me away. Fucking... It's so much better than this album. Like, holy shit. And then so I reacted to this album, not only did they get blocked, but also it wasn't really that great. Like, it had some good moments, for sure, Like, but again, there's a lot I can complain about. First off, the first song, so the concept, concept of this album is basically very loose. There isn't even barely a concept. Where I guess I had a friend, one of the managers, I think, who used to work on old cars. I forget it was refurbishing or selling or collecting, but he found like a notebook in one of them, right? And it was for this guy who was trying to find. It was someone who was adopted, and he was trying to find his like birth parents, right? And him, he had very similar goals, and he had like the same kind of background, so he kept that notebook. And I think that manager eventually died before he could do that. But all the names that pop up in this album, like Miranda and stuff, come from that book. The problem is, beyond that, the lyrics don't mean fucking anything, you know? And I've heard from people that, like, that's how this whole band is, and I listen to a lot of other songs, and yeah, the lyrics don't seem to mean really anything. So already, there's kind of points knocked for that. And here's the thing, Clutch does that too, where they'll have like a concept album like Blast Tyrant, where there's a loose concept, and they don't really put too much, care in their vocals. They're kind of tongue in cheek a lot of the time, but you can still tell there's a story there, and you can still follow along. It seems like this is more inspiration. Like, you know what? That's a cool story. Anyways, let's make an album about it. That's kind of unrelated, but also somewhat related, I guess, even though it doesn't really seem to be. So, what about the actual music? Now that I've ranted enough about that, what about the music? It's aight, a lot of it. This album technically, you could say it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tracks, or 12 tracks. That's something I'm gonna complain about too. The first track, Cygnus, Vismund Cygnus, it's an alright song. It's pretty good, Mars Volta really likes to do this thing where I've heard some people describe it as sonic terrorism, where I don't know how good of a description that is, but those aren't my words. But basically, they just like to be abrasive and break all these rules and kind of stuff, but they don't really do it in the right way. For example, the song starts off with a very quiet, beautiful acoustic intro, and then it blasts you with this incredibly frantic, rhythmic, jazz fusion, funk kind of craziness. It's almost manic, almost, right? And it's not that it's bad. It's that the intro is really, really quiet, and the actual music is pretty loud, and there's no reason for that. Because by the nature of it being acoustic, and, the guy was singing quieter, it's gonna be quieter. But they actually they manually pushed the volume on it way down, so it was really quiet. And what ends up happening is, rather than have a song start out calm, peaceful, get you in a mood, and then kind of punch you in the face in a good way, it more so blows out your ears in a bad way. Besides that, the rest of the song is, alright, like a lot of progressive rock or metal bands, right? Obviously, they're all really talented. They can really play. I like the vocalist a lot, actually, as a singer myself, and especially a higher range person myself. I really like when I can find bands like Mars Volta or Muse or Journey or what have you, because that circuit vocal practice, and higher male voices just have a certain color to it you don't really get with other things, right? So yes, they're really talented. They can all play their asses off, but it's a matter of songwriting skill, right? Like Dream Theater can play their asses off, but especially in the first half of their career, they still have really good songwriting. A band like Swans, right? They might be really abrasive and experimental, but it's still a good songwriting, and they know how to use the power of sonic sound and how it works, right? They know exactly how to manage push and pull and a track flow and crescendos. They really understand how sound works as its own thing. And Mars Volta seems like they don't. And they're trying to artificially push things and manipulate things they don't have to do. Like, they could literally just have that acoustic intro just not be so quiet, and it would have been a much better musical moment. The rest of the song is alright. Um, they had they had this thing that I actually really like is they have these weird like interludes and these breaks between the songs where there are these like electronic, just there are these really experimental avant-garde little electronic sections, So they'll have a song and it'll end, it'll fade out, and there's all this weird, like tape loops and like weird synths and like background noise and like recordings just kind of playing in the background, and it's really trippy and it's nice. But again, the problem is they don't know how to balance it. Where let's say the next song, "The Widow," like I think that's probably the best song on the album. The problem is about half of it, of a 6 minute song, so about 3 whole minutes, is just wacky little stuff. To be fair, with "The Widow," the wacky little stuff is really good. I like how the synths sound. I like how the reverse, like what they're doing, and it actually puts you into some trance. What I don't like is on songs like "Miranda That Ghost Just Isn't Holy Anymore" at the start, or at the end of Cygnus, Vismund, Cygnus, is they don't seem like they're fucking doing anything. Sometimes synths can be painful to listen to. Same with the guitar tone too. I feel like sometimes the guitar tone is great. It has that kind of classic rock kind of feel all the times, where it's somewhat tinny. But also, sometimes it really hurts my fucking ears. And again, same with the synths too. So some of these songs, like La Via, can't say it. I'm gonna try to pronounce it. With songs like that, I want to blast them really loud, but they don't feel good to blast loud because the bass isn't really there. And as much of a wall of sound that they have, it's not really a wall of sound. There's a lot of space in the mix. And again, there's not really a lot of bass, there's a lot of treble, so when you blast it loud, not only does it doesn't feel good, it doesn't have that like push that something like Swans would have, or most other bands with better production, but also it tends to hurt sometimes, you know? Also, a lot of those interludes, again, like they're so long, like "The Widow," about half of it is that those interludes. They work well there. That's the only place they work. Miranda, the Miranda That Ghost Just Isn't Whole Anymore, is a 13-minute song. They have like a 4-minute interlude at the start where basically nothing happens. It's so boring. And at the end, it's the same thing. So they have like a 3-minute, 4-minute song sandwiched between two really boring interludes. And it just doesn't work well, And especially with Sigmund, Vismund, Cygnus going to "The Widow," it just clips. Like, they have their weird avant-garde experimental stuff on, the first track, and then just goes right into "The Widow." At least with "The Widow" to "La Via," at least there's a transition. You can actually hear it. But again, on, if I remember correctly, on "La Via" and "Miranda," it does also transition as well. It actually smoothly goes. But then, at the end of "Miranda," after the weird, avant-garde electronic stuff, right? They have this instrumental section that's not as quiet as the intro of Cygnus, but it's still quiet, and then it just drops right into Cassandra Gemini, which, holy shit, is that suite a fucking mess? It shouldn't even be a suite, or at least how they've organized it, right? So, I'm gonna get a lot of things, I might forget some things here, because they've really organized this like fucking garbage. I'm gonna be honest, as an entire. This is why I said, this album technically has 5 songs, but also technically 12 songs, because rather than have a song that's very long, like let's say "Dream Theater's Glass Prison" or "A Change of Seasons," where it's one long song, and they have they broke up into a suite. Of course, there's movements, right? There's movement 1, movement 2, movement 3, but it's still one song. They've separated every movement into its own song. So you have track 5, Cassandra Gemini, track 6, Jesus, Cassandra Gemini, um, Tarantism, track 7, Cassandra Gemini, plant, so on and so forth, you know? And I don't know how the hell they decided where to cut some of these segments, but holy hell is it bad. Especially like the last ones, right? Like Cassandra Gemini, you know, it's probably one of the weakest parts on the album as a whole. The first Cassandra Gemini, right? You know, um, however, the transition into the second phase, Tarantism, is really good, and Tarantism as a whole is really really nice. That's one of the highlights on the album. You know, probably along with La Via. You know, um, that's one of the other things I forgot to mention real quick is that like a lot of the flows, right, with these instrumental interludes with all the electronics, right? You know, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to lull you into a trance and trying to like put you on a roller coaster, right? But the problem is it doesn't work because either the synths are unpleasing to the ear, or they go on way too long, or when they actually come in with something, it just drops in. With the Widow and La Via, it's a very beautiful song. It slowly lulls you in to this actually, very mesmerizing synths for a few minutes, and just when you are kind of, in a very lulled state, then they slowly push into La Via, and then it drops with an actually really, really banger riff. And it actually has a lot of impact because it's so groovy, you know? I wish the bass would have done some more. Um, there's actually a riff they did where they played along on the guitar in a cool way they could have done for the rest of the song. I forget how I talked about it in the reaction, and I kind of mimicked it a bit. You can watch that if you want on Patreon again for free. I have to think about it and actually play the song to actually remember it, so I'm not gonna recreate it here. But there is ways it could have had the bass player do some more interesting stuff on that track and made it better. The point is, with the first phase of Gemini into the second phase, it did the same thing, where it's actually a really good build up and transition. I don't really recall the differences between the other tracks, or the other phase of Gemini, because sometimes where they cut it makes sense, sometimes it just doesn't. But again, you could have Cassandra Gemini and Tarantism, as one track, but you don't really have to separate them, but you could have it as one, At least that, traditionally I've seen it before, where it might be directly connected, but it's a very different sounding section, So I get where they want to cut it there into a second thing, but some of these will have multiple different sounding sections, or they'll have like a section, and they'll cut it and then go into another song, and then they have the same section again. So I don't know what the point of cutting it is. And again, like especially with the track like Multiple Spouse Spoons, which is track 11, it's just the main riff of Cassandra Gemini, or it's the main chorus for 47 seconds. That's it. Like, what's the point like in having that as its own 47-second track when it clearly comes directly off of Con Safo, just like how Tarantism comes off of the first phase. You can have Con Safo and Multiple Spouse Spoons as one track, and that'll work way better. They just didn't fucking do that. And then you have the last track of Cassandra Gemini, Sarcophagi, which is just the acoustic intro at the start of Cygnus, but at an actual proper volume. And again, like, there's no fucking point to having it there. Like, it's just Cassandra Gemini, and then as a part of Cassandra Gemini, it just cuts out, then randomly drops into this acoustic section that's totally unrelated, and it just fucking whiplashes you. And again, like, I get how some people might say, well, yeah, it's the point, they're trying to throw you off, and they're trying to be abrasive and break all these rules, but they're not doing it properly. There's, again, like with a band like Swans, right, there's ways to be abrasive but still have good songwriting. There's ways to be, boundary pushing and experimental and have that push and pull and having a proper balance of it. You know, you can't just do weird avant-garde shit and expect it to work. You have to actually do it the right way. Like again, like the end of The Widow is mesmerizing and it goes on for the exact right time. But something like Miranda, it's a long intro that doesn't really do anything. The song is kind of okay, and a different long outro that doesn't do anything, that just drops right into a different song, just cuts right into it. That's not good. And again, with how the suite is cropped up, you know, you could have like a Dream Theater song. You could have it as one 20-minute song, you know, one track, and you would have a lot less problems. A lot of the problems with Cassandra Gemini is that it's set up in different tracks, and it makes it very hard to know what parts are where. So I could say like, oh, this song had really, really nice guitar solos. This had a really nice jam session, you know. These two songs had really cool, really impressive flute parts and really impressive saxophone parts. I don't know where those fucking parts are, because the thing is scattered. They're scattered around, and things cut up very horribly. So I've had to listen to this like I think 5-6 times. I still don't know where these different parts are. But again, Cassandra Gemini as a whole has a lot of high points. You know, overall, you know, it's an okay song. You know what I mean? It's pretty good. You know, again, there's highs and lows. You know, I don't think it's perfect by any means. Even if you were to have it as one track, you know, like again, most of the first phase is just okay. The chorus is the best part, and it's just okay. Tarantism is really good, you know. Some of the jam sessions are great. Some of the other tracks are really good. Spouse Wounds and Sarcophagi are just fucking pointless, especially Sarcophagi. Con Sappho, again, I get their lyrics don't really mean anything. But when you have a track like Con Sappho, where the lyrics are front and center and they also don't mean anything, you should at least care what you're saying then. Because when you have lyrics that are directly in your face, like on Con Sappho, that's the main focus. It's like when you have a guitar solo, it's not in the background, it's front and center. That's the main focus. So if you're going to have a little interlude where you're talking about stuff, make it make sense. And there's ways, again, to write lyrics that are kind of, you know, cryptic and stuff, while still adhering to fucking basic grammar, you know? Like Tool and some Dream Theater songs, you know, write, and even Birthday Massacre, you know, or Radiohead, like a lot of bands that are good bands, you know, they can write cryptically, but you can tell they're still talking about something. It's just very cryptic. With Mars Volta, they're not even using words correctly. Lap danced, with ed at the end, danced. That's not a fucking adjective. That's like when you say a lap danced lapel. That phrase grammatically does not make fucking sense. That, you know, you don't say I don't know, a tabled bowl of soup. Tabled isn't a fucking adjective. That's not how that works. You know what I mean? Like, you don't say a running running glass. Running isn't an adjective. It's like, I mean, kind of. Point is, like, when you're gonna put lyrics front and center, at least make them make sense for that part. At the very fucking least, you know. So I don't know if you could tell, but I do like this album. You know, it's not horrible. As much as I've hated on it, you know, and I've talked shit for the past however long, it's not a horrible album. You know, I think the best parts are definitely, you know, the first couple of tracks. I think the best tracks, you know, no question, The Widow is probably the best track, you know. La Vie is also really nice, you know. Cygnus, Vismund, Cygnus, you know, is also really good. The Widow's the best, you know. La Vie, I feel like it drags on a little bit. It's a bit too back and forth copy paste, and the outro's a bit long. But the riffs and all the other parts are just too good. That like it's still amazing, even with the copy paste feel, and the at least again the outro, I mean, is actually a proper outro, and it's done pretty well. like The Widow, I just feel like the first part of the outro, where some people arguing, I think they could have made this outro as a whole be a bit shorter, because again, it's like several minutes. Um, but La Via, still, really good song. Um, Second best song. Cygnus, third best song. Cassandra Gemini, actually, as an entirety of one track, is, I'd say, good. It's all right. It has, the highs are decently high. There's like two really big high points. Tarantism, and I think that's kind of it. You know, the rest is kind of all right. But most of it's pretty snooze worthy. And I'm not talking about the instrumental jam sections; those are fine. I'm talking about some of the parts that are actually clearly written parts of the song, like the first phase. They could just been written better. And then I think Miranda the Ghost that just didn't hold anymore is part of the worst song on this album, um, probably by far. Um, it's a good album. I like what they're going for, but it is most definitely not a masterpiece by any means. Um, because there is flaws, therefore it's not a masterpiece, although it is still good. And especially the first half ish, is still really enjoyable. I'd probably give this album, I don't know, probably a 5. Because as good as as good as the good parts are, and as high as the highs are, the lows are so fucking abysmal, and they really outweigh it when you try and listen to this as a full listen. Like I go back to the other songs a lot, like The Widow and La Via, but I'm still skipping half the songs because of those long sections, right? And what they could have done is have the songs and then have those little sections separated, because if they were separated, the songs would stand much better by themselves. When you have these huge sections as part of the songs, you have a really nice song, then you have half of it just not being worth playing. So we end up skipping half the song, sometimes like 2/3 of a song. Every time I want to listen, like I gotta skip to the middle of the song just to get to the song, and I gotta fucking skip the last 4 minutes because the song's basically over. So I'd probably say this album is a 4 or a 5. I've ranted about this for 27 minutes. My cough drop has finally ran out, so I'm gonna start coughing and stuff probably. So I'm gonna end it here. I might do some reactions later on. I don't know. If you like what you've seen here, subscribe and stuff. Whatever you feel like. If you like it, like the video. If you don't like it, dislike the video. I don't care. I'm all about honesty here. Feel free for you guys to be honest as well. I encourage it. I try and look at a lot of the stuff unbiasedly, so be honest. I do plan to release my own music eventually, so if you want to subscribe and stay tuned for that, feel free. I'm literally doing it all myself. Guitar. There's guitars and bass and drums and keyboard and a lot of stuff behind me. I'm literally doing it all, recorded from my room. So if you want to stay tuned for that, that'd be appreciated. I really try and look at artists here that for whatever reason deserve some more recognition. Artists have been overlooked, and some mainstream artists, that interest me, to a level. So when the new King Gizzard album comes out, I'm gonna give that a listen. That seems like it's gonna be a fun time. So if you want to discover some interesting music, some music you might not hear other people talking about, some stuff you definitely won't hear others talking about, then yeah, feel free to subscribe. And yeah, that's about it. Sorry this video took like fucking 2 weeks or something to do, since the reaction rate again got really sick. So that's not much I can do about that. Really sorry. I don't want to record a video where I'm constantly coughing and vomiting. So you're welcome. Anyways, that's gonna be it. Have a good one.